Oh, she's untouchable, yeah, she's unstoppable. Tick, 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 hearts on split, split, split. Watch her move, boy, she's your meltdown hit. She walks in like a savior draped in radioactive silk. Promises the future, but her balance starts to tilt. Her heels strike the ground, they call it innovation, but every move she makes is pure detonation. Tick, tick, watch her light the fuse. Her lips are like ignition sparks in every word she speaks. She dances through collapse while her empire springs a leak. She's got blueprints in her pocket, cores hidden in her clutch, and every man who follows her forgets she burns too much. Snap, snap, she's the queen of chaos. Tick, 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 watch her take control. She's a meltdown queen with a heart so cold. Snap, 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 you're under her spell. She's the meltdown queen and she does it so well. Let's break it down. She keeps a coded suitcase, her secrets stitched in seams. Her nails are brushed with graphite, her plans are laced with schemes. They call her the solution, but her lies are all on tape. And when the fallout settles, there's no chance to escape. Now you're caught in her trap. Shaman never ends. Oh, she's flawless, she's insane. Your dream girl, your nightmare, your chain reaction flame. She's untouchable, unshakable, impossible to tame. But when she melts down, boy, you'll forget her name. Tick, tick, she's the game you'll lose. Tick, 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 she's a chain reaction. Every step she takes leaves destruction. Snap, 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 her game is supreme. Meltdown queen, she's the star of your dream. You don't even know. Charm's a perfect weapon, her brilliance blinding clear. Her plans are sealed in circuits and she smiles to engineer. Every corporation crowns her of the prize, while the ocean full and cities vaporize. Tick, tick, she's the queen of disguise. Tick, 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 she's untouchable, unstoppable. She'll steal your soul, leave you unlovable. Snap, 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 what's left to say? Meltdown queen and she'll blow you away.
It's called Meltdown Queen. Man, that thing is rocking. Hello, welcome back. It's called Dr. Sternglass.
Dr. Sternglass knew the risk.
He was the guy who quantified. That's in the playlist. If you click the link in the description, you'll get that whole playlist of anti-nuclear songs like you've never heard before. I'll tell you this right now. All right, here we go. Hey, Dana. Hello, everybody. James is at war, and in a really good way. All right, here we go. Blah, blah. We made it through this week, thank goodness. That's a good. Desperate to get up to speed again, right? And so, and push even harder now. Spring is here. Summer's coming. We need to make some stuff happen this year. The world deserves an opportunity to survive. Japan is going to use non-existent American technology to remediate the contaminated hazmat suits. Contaminated hazmat suits. These guys are insane, eh? It's just astounding what they got away with. Just give me 1 second here. I got to get a picture of a suit because they don't provide you with that stuff. Because otherwise you'll laugh. Oh, crap. Try it again. Come on, Dana. You can do this. There we go. There's just so much. Look, I can't. Instead of clicking it, I got to right click it. Otherwise, the folders, there's so many folders. We're off to a bad start. We'll get better. You can't keep up with it. Every folder is good, but I just wanted some paper suits or Tyvek suits. They're calling these hazmat suits. Like plutonium is an isotope that strikes fear in everybody, right? But curium isotopes, which is the biggest byproduct of the radioactive fuel rods, have 500 times more energy. And they're the biggest byproduct, not plutonium. So these are not paper suits. These can't protect you from energy pulsing almost at the speed of light. Over 5,000 rubberized contaminated... I love these shows, by the way. These are the best shows. These are the shows where you're like, oh, shit, I forgot. Crap, they don't talk about that stuff anymore. So there was actually, if there's 7,000 workers on site, there should be 7,000 suits. Right? Every day there's 7,000 suits. Theoretically, you can't reuse the suits, but the homeless are often given secondhand radiation suits, which are paper suits. The mentally handicapped are working at Fukushima, not academics. And they're not wearing hazmat suits, which is... It's really dishonest, and I really disrespect the media for calling these things hazmat suits. If you put any of the media in a paper suit or a Tyvek useless suit and brought them to Fukushima, they'd claw your eyes out to get away. They know difference. They're not naive or gullible or anything like it. So 5,000 rubberized contaminated suits used by cleanup crews working in the facility. So what's the date on this? 2012. Okay. August. So, August 2012. So you had, it happened March, right? So that's 1 year. That's 12 months. And so April, May, June, July, August is 5 more months. So 17 months. So 17 times 30 days. We'll just square it off at 30 days. 510 days. Multiply that by 5,000 suits a day. It's only 2.5 million suits. That's going to look pretty impressive. Because the suits can be, when they're originally in the packages, they're compressed, they're packaged really nice. Once you take them off, they're a big, stupid bundle that expands on its own, right? Do you know what I mean? Just shake your head like that. Don't worry about it. So, 2.5 million suits by August. Now, it was actually allegedly was 7,000 people at a nuclear meltdown. What is 7,000 people going to do at a nuclear meltdown again? Anybody want to, without getting killed immediately? Besides getting killed immediately? Over 5,000 rubberized contaminated. These are not rubberized suits. It's completely dishonest. It's so far from the truth that these people should, they should be shamed about it. The mentally handicapped, the destitute, the victims of society, the immigrants who don't speak the language. Last Friday, Vision Plasma System stock tanked. Their stocks tanked. In other words, they shouldn't even been on the stocks market. After a record number of over 300 million shares were traded on Thursday before news of the agreement with Cellrunner was announced. On Thursday and Friday alone, if traders timed their actions perfectly, they potentially could have doubled their investment in just a few hours and then sold. So put $1 million in, take $2 million out a couple hours later. These are shady as you can get. Another financial analyst website, Hot Stocks, noted the company hadn't announced any finances, so how could they even manufacture those units is a bit of a mystery. So they have two 40-foot metal containers. The units claim to be capable of converting up to 5 tons of hazardous waste and other matters into gas, net electricity, and recyclable metal ingots, without any air emissions or ashes from the gasification process. So they're talking about at Fukushima. So if you incinerate nuclear waste, you liberate the radiation back into the environment. But it gives you a little insight into the shenanigans they're using to loot the system. They had no integrity. They're not doing anything. They're totally fictional and on paper, right? They're a paper company. If crisis worsen, it's difficult legally to order workers to stay at Fukushima plant when all of them could die. But yeah, the reactors ejected their inventories all over the site. That's the worst case scenario. And there was multiple reactors, and they were huge reactors with decades of reactor cores. We can't give them an order that might lead to their deaths. So they just sent in the homeless and the destitute and the victims of society, the immigrants who don't speak the language. So monthly creator Roundup. You know what Roundup? That's Monsanto's with a picture of a dandelion on the bottle, right? And green. And dandelion, of course, is a miracle plant. It's one of the most impressive plants imaginable because you can also make tea out of it with the roots. It's incredibly beneficial. It has all the micro, macro nutrients that your body would crave, and has been very successful in the uses of cancer. Incredibly success. So it ain't going to hurt. You know what doesn't have any success is chemotherapy, chemoradiation therapy, and radiation therapy, because it's not therapy, it's, you guessed it, genocide. But what was really interesting in my section was ideas for me. Get up to 2,400 to 8,200 more impressions if I continue to gut Dutch Sink, who falsely claiming they faked Fukushima on YouTube, can help you gain more impressions if I want to promote the video. They're throwing Dutch Sink under the fence, under the bus. That's hilarious, eh? That's AI, I'm sure. YouTube's not doing it. I mean, here's other people who said that, this is just a fraction. That's ABC Australia, Cecilia Vega, who's a press secretary at the White House, currently making $1 million a year. Same as Rupert Winfield Hayes and Seth Dorn, who's a former, he's a senator's son. 1968 pictures of Fukushima nuclear meltdown, part 3. That was quite a few years ago, that picture. I had a lot of subscribers back then. I had 24,000. 24,000 subscribers. And so you'll find, I had to do it, they took down that site on me because I was there looking for spiders. I know, right? I'm an idiot. I should have known better. Why would I want to go look for spiders on a research expedition field studies for? I'm not lazy, guy. IAEA backs Fukushima discharge, controlled discharge. Here it is right here. Watch this. It's pretty controlled. Look at it. Let me get out of the way. Give me a big stupid head out of the way. Does that look controlled to you? I'm just saying. What did he do with the 2.5 million paper suits? I disappeared there and clicked the wrong thing. So control releases. That's 2012, was it? Oh, 2026. I'm sorry. I don't know why that one's there. Oh, contaminated water accumulating at Fukushima Daiichi still poses problems for TEPCO. March 13, 2012. So, 2012. Well, the next year, early next year, Rupert Winfield Hayes from the BBC, and you'll hear him in this little video, he says all the tanks are filled because they had an aquifer, a joint aquifer under a nuclear plant. Now, for years, I got attacked every time I said that. But since I dug up the video of it, they kept their pie hole shut. It's a really important video. So if all the tanks were filled in 2013, that's when this video was posted, then where did the water go for 2014, 2015, while they were building the Alps, which you can't use? You can't filter the water. If you try doing it, you can never get near the filter after 20 minutes, forever, or back in the building, because now you got thousands of sieverts in the filters, right? And TEPCO is actually in this video. Is my audio kicking back on your side? Just give me a second. I don't know what I'm doing here. Oh, okay.
Fukushima plant sits smack in the middle of an underground aquifer. Deep beneath the ground, the site is rapidly being overwhelmed by water. Beneath the surface, water flows downhill and into the basement of the damaged reactor buildings. There it is contaminated with high levels of radiation. To stop the groundwater flowing on into the nearby ocean, engineers are building an underground barrier. But that is causing the groundwater level to rapidly rise. It's now so high the water will soon reach the surface. Then it will start flowing overground into the sea. This week, the company that owns Fukushima, TEPCO, made this disturbing admission.
We understand that this water discharge is beyond our control, and we do not think the current situation is good.
Outside experts say it's now clear TEPCO is incapable of handling the cleanup at Fukushima. It's time for the Japanese government to step in. The situation is already beyond what TEPCO can handle, he says. If it were possible to take proper measures, they would have done it already. It's not as if TEPCO is refusing to do what they can. They're doing everything they can, but there are no perfect solutions. Even if the government does step in, it's not clear what it can do. The only other solution is to pump out the contaminated groundwater and put it in storage tanks. But after just 2 years, the site is already jammed with more than 1,000 giant tanks. Most of them are already full up. At least 400 tons of new water pours into the site every day, and it's going to continue for years and years. Fukushima's water crisis has only just begun. Rupert Wingfield Hayes, BBC News in Tokyo.
400 tons is equal to 3 garden hoses, like 3/4-inch garden hoses. At your typical 30 pounds per square inch is around 140 tons in 24 hours. So 400 tons a day is equal to... What did I do wrong here? Oh,
Fukushima.
Sorry. 400 tons a day, eh? The reactors typically need 4,500 tons a minute. Just make sure my audio is on there. Anyway, did my audio start losing it on your end, folks? So what we do is we just challenge the lies, and boy, there's no shortage of work. Contaminated water, this is 2012, is currently estimated to be leaking out of the reactors. It's leaking out of these reactors. I don't know how, but it's leaking out of the reactors apparently. 10,000 tons a month. 10,000 tons a month. No mercy, eh? Let's look at what 10,000 tons a month actually is. It sounds like a lot, right? I wouldn't want to be 10,000 tons a month. Wow, that's so scary. I'm almost peeing myself here right now. I gotta cross my legs. Clench the butt cheeks. So 10,000 divided by 140 tons for a garden hose in 24 hours. So 71 garden hoses total. So divide that by I lost track of things now. So it's supposed to be 30 days, right? Divided by 30. I'll get there. So 2.3 garden hoses a day. Yeah, 10,000 tons a month. Cleaning up and storing the excess is a constant challenge. I can imagine 2.3 garden hoses a day. That's crazy. Personally, I would imagine use a lot more than that. The reactors underground are burning at 9,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures. What didn't get released directly into the environment, which was most of it, but not all of it. It's probably 5 or 6 million pounds went down deep down to the bedrock, where there's a riverbed. They covered the riverbed, as they do at all sites, over with shale, for 40, 50 feet of shale, which is like flat rocks. It splits really good, but it also makes lots of air pockets. So it's rocks, and so anything getting washed down will just trickle down or get washed down. Let's say if there's a typhoon or it's winter and there's snow melt or there's a rainstorm or in the spring, summer, fall. And that'll wash it down to the riverbed. The riverbed washes it out into the ocean. But all nuclear power plants have that same design. They're called their oh shit plan. High contaminated marine snow covered the seafloor at least 2,000 kilometers from Fukushima. But don't worry, nothing got out. Everything's in the 30 million one-ton bags. That never gets a mention. After being used to cool the reactor, the water goes through a processing facility so the radioactive substances are removed to a certain extent. 2012. Yeah, 2012. Yeah. How do you filter fuel particulates? How does that work again? You got gammas and alphas, neutrons and betas showing up in the filter, and then what happens after a few hours? You got a chain reaction because you got a neutron source. And you got curium, you got plutonium, you got the uranium, you got a lot of fission products. You're going to have a chain reaction. It's basic science, right? It's the very foundation of nuclear, actually. Some of the water is recycled as coolant and pumped back into the reactors. So if you pour water over these and you vacuum it, you suck it out somehow magically, because electronics will die with the shock from that stuff. Anybody walks around the hoses or past the hoses or over the hoses, unless they're 6 feet thick, are going to get a lethal dose. Fuel particles, by the way, are the highest energy you can imagine is fuel. And so it's also splitting atoms on a brutal rate. But if you put them together, you're going to have a chain reaction. You're going to have a criticality event. It's going to have a meltdown. You're going to burn a hole through whatever containment you're trying to hold, because nothing holds 9,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures. But like, if you take a couple of liters of that water and put it in a jug, and then put it in, say, you're building a subway, and you open the wall up, the gyprock wall by the stairs, and you put a 2-liter jug of that stuff inside of there. It's 15, 20 sieverts. Everybody walks past that dies that day or that week for thousands of years. You're going to take it and aggregate it from 15 to 20 sieverts for a couple of liters, because you got gammas and alphas and neutrons and betas. And these are particles, fuel particles. You lost 36 reactor core inventories. And you're washing that stuff. You're not vacuuming anything up. Everything's getting washed straight back down. Nothing's going in tanks. The tanks, they might put fresh water in there, because they learned with empty tanks, when they have earthquakes, they shift. Which looks kind of bad, right? If you fill up the tank with this stuff, you're talking about, if you just look at beta, you're looking at 1.4 million sieverts of beta. How are you going to build another tank within thousands of feet of that? How are you going to survive driving past that in a car at high speed, let alone trying to walk past it? How does that work? How does that physics work again? It doesn't. It's one lie after another lie, after another lie, after another lie. It's nonstop. And then suggesting that they filtered it in 2012, Riva wasn't built. Just grab it. It's offensive to anybody that's intelligent that they're suggesting they can filter. I got a great way to, I have lots of little shortcuts to tell the story without making it complicated. The only problem is I have too much. Let's see what this, I got short versions, that'll work. Now, you heard BBC Rupert Winfield Hayes just say that all the tanks were filled in 2013, right? It's such a crazy story that all the media regurgitated it without exception. Okay. It's kind of important. We haven't covered this for a minute. So, TEPCO, 2014, April 21st. TEPCO is unable to bring the contaminated water issues under control at Fukushima. The Advanced Liquid Processing System, ALPS, had yet to function reliably. They never started building ALPS until 2013. And in 2015, they allegedly had it running. But it can't run. It was the same thing. Riva was the same thing. In 2014 also, but later, August, TEPCO abandons the Riva system, has been unused and kept out of operation. Okay. Everything's going straight into the ocean, just as sugar. There's certain parts of the site we don't have control over. So the homeless will say, go over there and pick up that shovel or something, or pick up that debris, and then they drop dead. And then the crane comes, swings over and picks the body up, puts it in a container, gets brought to a crematorium, and is incinerated. I showed you that earlier, right? That over 800 people died. There are certain parts of the site where we don't have full control. That means it's lethal doses. TEPCO says the groundwater bypass operation is not having effect. The water coming down the mountain was going to be blocked, pulled, and then pumped directly into the ocean, so it didn't run through the reactors. That didn't work. They were going to build a fence to stop the radiation from going in the ocean, because fence are actually sheep. You can contain them, see? That didn't work, because they claimed it was because it was going to take $1 billion. Like, everything was lost on day 5, March the 16th. The inventories from 4 reactors and the fuel pools were gone, which was a total of 36 reactor cores. Each reactor core is pure uranium, pure plutonium, Chernobyl was a graphite reactor. It was a small reactor. It was a new reactor. It didn't have fuel pools or like Fukushima, decades, at least 3 decades of fuel stored in the building, or at the top of the building, rather. Chernobyl was a brand new reactor. It was a small reactor. It was a graphite, whereas Fukushima was pure uranium plutonium. So it was a ratio of 100 to 1. So at Fukushima, each reactor was about 3 decades old. Now, typically, each decade, the reactor produces about 5.5 reactor cores, which are stored at the top of the buildings because they don't have a repository in Japan or anywhere else on the planet. And so we're talking 3 days later, so it could 3 decades later, so it could be 15 reactor cores. But let's lowball it and say there's 9. And I am lowballing it by saying 9 because you don't have a place to put it outside of dry cask storage, which is chock full of 6 reactors, and the common spent fuel pool, which is right across the street. And we know it had windows at a low level. The tsunami ran right through it and piled up all kinds of containers behind it. You can't build a fence. All the atoms are the same size. You can't just isolate one atom and let the other atom go, oh, he's okay. It doesn't work that way. Let her lie. TEPCO's ice wall not meeting expectations. Why would you build an experiment like that when you don't have any time? Because you left a corporation that's not a decommission authority in charge rather than bring in the industry that builds it. Because you want to protect the industry, so let's blame TEPCO. Everything was TEPCO's fault. TEPCO was nationalized, by the way, by the government immediately. So it was actually the Japanese government. Japanese government / TEPCO officials announced today they have found the ice wall plans are not progressing according to plan. Well, they'd done it because it was an experiment and the taxpayers would pay for it. Because they don't got no say anyway. TEPCO admits the ice wall will not stop the groundwater from entering the crippled reactor buildings. Well, it's not just rain, it's not just snow, it's just not just typhoons. It's all that stuff coming down the mountain. That's the engineering aspect is known. Now, they had 260,000 people work on the ice wall. So that's 260,000 extra suits every day. We still haven't accounted for it. And it took them several years. So let's just do the math on that because why not? I want to show you how ridiculous the whole story is. So 260,000 people. Say they all went through 50 suits or 60 suits. Or say 77 suits, something weird. It's a lot more than that anyway. So that's 20 million extra suits. Now, if you do the number of suits that they've been producing for 15 years, that's just, why not? Let's go that road. So there's 7,500 people working on this site. That was the official numbers. You'll hear different numbers, but that's the official number. So multiply that by 30 days. And to multiply that, that's how many suits they got a month. Multiply that by 12 months. Did I screw that up? Yeah, that's right. So that's a year, and let's multiply that by 15 years. It's 43 million suits, then 20 million suits, 63 million suits, and so say 60 million suits, 30 million one-ton bags. Let's keep going here. 60 million suits is a lot of suits to try to pack in boxes and everything else. It's a lot of radiation if you incinerate it, released back into the environment. A map of radioactive iodine released, this was right away, June 27. This was the American military, 1,000 feet above ground. And they were just measuring iodine because iodine is the most powerful, right? Wrong. The biggest byproduct is the most powerful is the curium isotopes. They actually wouldn't be able to measure the iodine because the curium isotopes would have drowned out the signal. but nevertheless, there's 3 million becquerels of something per square meter. 20 kilometers away from the nuclear plant, for instance. So they want you to, like, they're trying to isolate you to that little area, which is a very dishonest thing to do. Radiation symmetrically covers the planet, and because radiation, the fuel and the contamination when it's atomized and aerosoled and ionized and radiated and released into the environment is an enormous. See, a gram of cesium is say 80 curies, and a curie is 37 billion atoms. So say, I can dig it up. I got it there. Or strontium's like 120 curies per gram. We're talking around 20 to 25 million pounds. So you can do the math. It's not a very pretty picture. Okay, hang on. I just want to show you a fallout map of Neptunium. Now, it says plutonium. It says Neptunium, but it's actually 20 days in. So Neptunium is a 2.5 day half-life. That's 25 days. And so it's almost all decayed to plutonium at this rate. So this is an actual plutonium. They do have a plutonium model, by the way. Now, the models are based upon TEPCO's official total release evaluations, which didn't include any of the inventories that I showed you earlier, the destroyed reactors. The fuel pools were never included, for instance. Reactor 3, 4 were never included. Most of the models are based, certainly all we show, are based upon venting. So if that's what venting does after 20 days, we're in real trouble. That's why we see an extinction event playing out. High price for the ice wall. There was a total of 260,000 people. So if you divide how much money they spent on the ice wall by 260,000 people, everybody made $1,140. Numbers vary, but that's the official number that we have. And that's if you don't build a wall, you don't use any equipment, you don't do this, you don't do that. You just gave everybody $1,100. There's zero possibility 260,000 people were working in proximity to the nuclear meltdowns. It's zero possibilities. You can't do that. Anyway. So this, ran through the common span fuel pool. It ran through the dry cask storage. It ran through reactor 1, 2, 3, 4, and reactor and the common span fuel pool, which is right across the street from reactor 3 and 4. EU Energy Commissioner calls Fukushima back in that days an apocalypse. Almost everything is out of control. Japan has lost control. The French should leave the country. And France is pro-nuclear as you get, so when they give up the ghost. Swiss embassy evacuates Tokyo fearing radiation. Fukushima very uncertain. Tokyo lost all control at Fukushima, Energy Commissioner. Nuclear report warns of an apocalyptic scenario at the Fukushima in the weeks ahead. The ambassador said this could one day be considered the start of the ultimate catastrophe of the world and the planet. This could one day be considered the ultimate catastrophe and apocalyptic. Excuse me. So we were doing a series of videos. This was 7 thumbnails I'm going to show you from 7 videos I'd done a few months ago. And I fell down and hurt myself, and then I got gout in my foot. So I went through some pretty rough times. Slowly trying to get back up to speed. So each of these thumbnails are 1, 2, 3 hour videos of similar whales worldwide that have starved to death and not washed up, but swam up on the shore. because they don't have any blubber or any fat or any muscle. If they die at sea, they'll sink. So the blue whale at the top left-hand corner should weigh the same weight as 10 transport trucks. And in that picture there, in the story, it's close to 100 feet, so it's a matured adult. Should weigh 400,000 pounds. Maybe weighs 30,000 because all it's there is skin, very thin skin at that, skeleton and organs. This bronze whale, this was the only picture showed up in Canada, and I'm sure the picture was higher quality than that, but when it get to Canada, it must have frightened the daylights out of the censor anyway. Up to 88,000 pounds. It weighed maybe 1,800 pounds. And there's some clear pictures maybe coming up. Here's another blue whale that probably weighs 40,000 pounds instead of 400,000 pounds. The humpback whales with the rib cages sticking there. That's another bronze whale. All of these were over the last year or months. There's another blue whale. When you see the peanut head, now peanut head, pretty, until the last couple of years, the whales were emaciated. So they were death stage starvation. They were way past anything we expected an animal could, because the ocean is buoyant, they were able to live a bit longer, but they cannibalized all the resources in their body, and at the end of it, they were cannibalizing the skin. And so the skin is laid like a wet blanket all over their structure, their rib cages, their spinal columns, etc., their head, we've never seen anything like it. And we predicted it, unfortunately, because, there's a lot of emaciated, starving whales showing up for the last since 2015, say, post-Fukushima. But it's runaway now. And so it's pretty safe to say that there won't be many whales left in 3 years. Now, this is a sperm whale, and you can see how the skin is so skinny, because that's what they were using to sustain their life for the last month or so. That it's like a wet blanket over the rib cage. Look at the rib cage. There's nothing, no body mass there. It's just skeleton and organs. And the same with that fin whale, for instance. We've got an enormous amount. Each of these thumbnails are pictures, or thumbnails of videos, presentations that I've done on the species die-off. You'll find them in my live stream, but you'll find a big list that's been going on several years, collected in my playlist of species die-off. It's around 60 videos. I think that's another fin whale. That's another fin whale. I think that's a humpback whale. I can't remember now. It's been a little bit. There's so much. Like every species of whales worldwide showing up in last stage starvation. So the food chain is broken. Right from the phytoplankton, the bases of the food chain, the oxygen chain, the carbon sequestering chain. And the same thing on land. Japan is working in 2013 to speed up the decommissioning. Workers, not scientists, of course, or union guys, or academics, or people from the 50 other nuclear reactors in Japan, or volunteers from the IAEA or anybody else. They're getting paid $11 US a day. Now, there was a located for them $1,200 USD a day, or $1,340 USD a day was located for each employee. So the bosses are just stealing the money and giving them basically $11 per day. And then if they show any symptoms of heat stroke or sick, they're released right away because they're going to die. They're the disposable, the homeless, the destitute, the victims of society, the immigrants who don't speak the language, and people they're hoping nobody will miss. In Fukushima City, over 90,000 houses are eligible for decontamination when nothing got out of the reactors. So nobody knows how 90,000 houses became eligible for decontamination. And by the way, you can't decontaminate a house from radioactive fallout, particularly after an event like Japan. So Fukushima City, over 30,000 people, should be razed to the ground, dug up, and then stored forever. This is a nuclear wasteland. And to keep people there is what they've done again, which is, it means that the industry is untrustworthy. It is out of control. It has no incentive not to be evil, and now it has done stuff like this to us. And so nothing's off the books for these people now. There's nothing too evil for them to do to you. So lethal radiation levels found at the leaking, and every time I hear the word leaking, it infuriates me over the years. I can never, ever hear the word without getting upset. It's ridiculous, I know, but if you followed along, then you know why. Exposure to 2.2 millisieverts, and the arrogance not to even call it 2.2 sieverts. The incredible hubris, the refusal to even try to have a conversation. For 3 hours can be fatal. So over 4 hours, it can be fatal. Or half of it over 4 hours is fatal. And half of that over 6 hours or 8 hours is going to be fatal. When you're working anywhere in proximity to a medusa, and there's 4 of them there, suggesting it's only 2.2 sieverts. Now they're only acknowledging beta, for goodness sakes. As if gammas and alphas, neutrons, and everything don't exist. Officials unsure what to do next. Korea calls Japan's handling of Fukushima incompetent. Today, they say that they're doing a great job and nothing got out, and they're promoting nuclear. Some of the water, there is no nuclear renaissance. Isn't it absurd how bizarre it is that they've had absurd amount of money to promote their nuclear renaissance post-Fukushima? It's an absurd amount of money. Like billions, $1 billion a year just for the public relation firms. Every year is guaranteed, and who knows how much more to thrown in. Some of the water is then recycled as coolant. You can't recycle water from a nuclear meltdown. It simply can't be done. And so even, let's say they were doing this. Obviously, you're not processing it. You can't process it, and they certainly couldn't process it in 2012 or 13, whatever this story is. And this was the idea of that narrative right there, some of the water is then recycled as a coolant, which is simply not true. But they were trying to account for the storage, right? Because remember, storage of this was so important, they made a claim there was 7,500 people on the site every day, and 6,000 people were working to stop the water from reaching the ocean. And everything was gone in 5 days. Not maybe, not perhaps, not almost. There's some left over that'll never stop emitting into the environment. Everything that's left over will never stop massive emissions into the ecosystem, the atmosphere. And the remaining portion is placed in tanks at the site. But the storage capacity could eventually run short, raising the possibility TEPCO may resort to dumping low. There is no low-level radioactive water at Fukushima. Zero of it. Everything is high level as you can get. The whole planet is tritiated now thanks to this idiot industry, this self-centered, egotistic, moron industry. So this is interesting. Since mid-June, it is estimated the cesium activities has increased by about 15% due to fuel decay products, has increased. Again, the biggest byproduct of the radioactive fuel rod is curium isotopes. And even if you particulate it, where you turn it into fine particles, each particle is splitting atoms for billions of years of not just cesium. Entire nuclear core injected into the environment. And then they show you that picture. Well, I put that picture. But the entire nuclear core can't be injected into the environment without ejecting the fuel pools too. They're right there. They're all drinking the same water. That's a poor use of You can't drink this stuff. For goodness sakes, don't ever drink it. The water problem isn't one that will go away soon. TEPCO has to keep constantly smothering the nuclear reactors with water for cooling until the melted nuclear fuel is removed, which could take 100 years or 1,000 years, they say, right? TEPCO will not be able to fix all the leaks. You can't fix all the leaks. I wonder why. Like, I'll bring up a picture. The maniacs, eh? That's the only way to describe them. They're so self-centered. They're so sadistic. And they're a threat to humanity and the 8 million species. They're an imminent threat to all of us. They refuse to take any accountability ever in their entire history of 80 years. And they have done nothing but harm to every species and every human on the planet. And it's brutal. It's an extinction event. We've done field studies for 6 years from Vancouver, British Columbia to Alaska. It's not up for debate. So how can anything leak out of these buildings? I'm not trying to be sarcastic or funny or obnoxious. Okay, maybe a bit obnoxious, but okay, a lot. Blah. Aside from laws banning the deliberate dumping of radioactive substances, that's such a funny statement. Japan is a fish-eating nation. Dumping the radioactive wastewater at sea will only result in ingestion of the radioactive fish by the greater population. Japan is a nuclear wasteland, for goodness sakes. They can't drink, shower, eat anything in that country without being poisoned with radioactive materials from Fukushima. Like, ground zero is brutal. North America has the same attributes. Canada, United States has that exact same attribute. Everything is tritiated on the planet from 80 years of emissions anyway, from 1,000 fuel pools. But Fukushima was a pulse event. TEPCO begins coating seafloor with cement mixture. Let me show that explosion again. Now, you realize that the plant is right on the ocean, right? You can't see it in that picture. I got a picture. That picture there. It's right on the ocean. That's not it. It's right there. So they were coating the seafloor with cement, a special mixture. And it's because the fuel assemblies landed right in the ocean from 4 reactor buildings. You know, what was crazy about the story was when the tsunami withdrew, it withdrew with enough debris that it made a pile out in the Pacific Ocean the size of Texas, 2,000 square miles. And that debris was coated with radioactive fallout from the explosions and the emissions in that first weeks. These were incredible particulates. And so when that was finding its way out there, a lot of it was being washed off in different places along the way into the ocean. So you had this massive debris of 1,100 miles of coastline being sucked out and then coated with radioactive particulates and fuel. And then some of that was washed off, some of it washed up on your beaches, decayed, and there are nuclear hotspots all over your planet now. Just from the particulates from the plumes. It's a sad story, see? It's a story that has to be heard, and people have to know. People deserve to know. People need to know so we can move forward. This was the French government, the IRSN. Let me see if I get the right one here. Yeah, radiation spiked a million times normal. Fucked that up. Excuse me. Excuse the Canadian coming out of me that time. Cesium levels increased 1 million to 10 million times per cubic meter of air in Canada, United States. And so after 23 days, this is what it looked like. This was the French government, the IRSN. That's their model over 23 days. At 1 million, 10 million amps, cesium-137 pulses energy 600 feet every second. But the biggest byproduct of the radioactive fuel is curium isotopes. The curium isotopes need lead shielding 20 times thicker than plutonium do, for instance. Chairman of Japan nuclear regulator blames declining worker morale for Fukushima leaks and problems. It's the lowly, homeless and destitute victims' problem, Dana. Not us. The nuclear industry would have done it right if we were there, but there's too much radiation. We couldn't go there. So the mentally handicapped are working at Fukushima, often given second-hand paper suits. That's why worse radiation suits than regular employees. Regular employees not going to Fukushima. Right? You never heard of a single, excuse me, I got to cut the dust in my throat here. Make sure I turn the volume back on. There's millions of paper suits missing. We should protest. The paper suits are humans too, right? The majority of the workers on site are subcontracted and have no tenure, or so they have no long-term employment. They have no unions or authority. Among the circles of TEPCO workers, they're drones. They're disposable drones. They're the homeless and the victims of society. Why are the subcontracted workers there? Because TEPCO does not want to unnecessarily expose their key on-site personnel. Well, the key on-site personnel are there by video only. They're not there. KPFA in Japan. I've learned over 800 people have disappeared from the Fukushima plant, may have been killed or died during work. Government actually in business with the mob. March the 19th, 2014. 800 people disappeared. And then the story goes, there was quite a few stories like this, and the story goes that their ashes were given to I don't know the right terminology, Buddhist monasteries and places like that, to pray over their ashes, which were incredibly radioactive, you can be sure. Right now, human beings cannot even enter the reactor buildings. Right now, or next year, or next decade, or next millennium. So the intricate knowledge of the buildings is not as helpful as will be down the road. Well, you're not going in the buildings down the road. You twisted and sadistic and demented, hateful scum that you are. You're not going in these buildings down the road. And all the knowledge in the world is not going to change anything with these buildings. Right? So they're justifying evil. So the intricate knowledge of what? Of these stumps that should have been 190 feet tall, 65 meters, 19-story buildings. Everything was pulverized below, because the explosion not only goes up, it goes down too, right? So this is framed as if they're going back in the building down the road. There's nobody I would like to punch any more than whoever wrote that sentence right there. Besides Shinzo Abe, but he already got punched. Some co-workers are really tempered, Because he poisoned the entire planet that he can poison with food from a nuclear wasteland for years. In the near future, every monument to him will be just destroyed with nothing but contempt and vigor. He's the scum of the earth, like everybody else in the nuclear industry. Some co-workers are really temperate. Does that sound like nuclear scientists? Nuclear scientists are like that too, by the way. They use violence in nuclear. You got to worry about that. That's not a nuclear scientist. The nuclear scientists, when a car backfires, they all defecate in their pants and then wipe it all over themselves because they think somebody's coming for them finally. We are not to cause any trouble like fight while at the Medusa, Reactor 3. So you're not allowed to fight when you're at that reactor. Really? What are you doing at that reactor? Or specifically, can a human do there without getting a lethal dose? These are like sniper rounds. There's so much fuel there. Like the buildings can't shield you from the fuel. Currently, TEPCO is stuck in a holding pattern using expendable red shirts for the Trekkie fans. Paid a minimum amount, sent in to do the most dangerous work and get blamed for all the mistakes, right? That's right. UN official astounded. Homeless are taken to work at Fukushima ready to die because it's a kamikaze. They're treated as kamikaze. Here, have some sake. It's your last drink. And write your will on this paper here. At the end of the month, they're left with no pay if they survive. They end up in debt to the employers after food and housing fees are deducted. You know, TEPCO has J Village. And J Village, everybody there has to buy their own can of pop, their own coffees, their own teas. People, the victims of society doing the most heroic and dangerous work in human history, and they're absolutely fleeced. They're absolutely robbed of every facet of their dignity and their monetary. And not only that, there was $1,340 USD for every employee. And if you walk away with $11 a day, not an hour, a day, they were the lucky ones. They are literally nothing but contempt for them. TEPCO and the Japanese government had nuclear industry got nothing but contempt for the employees, where if they wanted a cigarette or they wanted some soup or something like that, they had to go to TEPCO's store and pay cash for it in a nuclear wasteland after coming out of the most dangerous nuclear wasteland with incredible damaging health effects are already evident. They're just robbed of any dignity left in them. That's nuclear industry. That's normal. That's what they do. That's who they are. That's what makes them tick. They get away with it. They have no incentive not to be evil. We're trying to write that. That's a wrong, and we're going to try to write it. This week, TEPCO confirmed that the reason why radioactive water leaked from the storage tanks is because TEPCO decided to purchase storage tanks which were not welded. Yeah, because you're not putting water in it. You're not pumping that out and putting it in a tank. That's why they bought that. They know difference. They needed tanks for the visual, for the pictures, so that everybody would shut up and leave them alone. And then eventually they'll just dump it all into the ocean, which is what the IAEA had been doing all along. They never went there until 2023, for goodness sakes. In order to save time and money. Well, like if you're trying, you wouldn't saving time and money is how you kill everybody, because you're talking about lethal doses by the liter just walking past it. You don't have to drink anything, just be in the proximity of it. So how did this building leak? I can't figure it out. I've been studying it and trying to figure it out. And just sort of had a hee-haw there for a second. Can anybody explain to me how anything got out of this building? I got all these sections there, so if you're from the nuclear industry, of course, you're going to say, look, nothing got out of that building, Dan. It's perfect right here. That's the stump of reactor 3. Now, to put this contraption over, they built it off-site, and then they assembled it with remote-controlled cranes and boy robots / homeless and destitute. And then they claimed inside of it was beautiful. It was so pretty on the inside. Why, the queen herself could eat right off the fucking floor. This always upsets me too for some reason. So this is what it looks like inside the top left-hand corner up there. Boink, everything's naturally beautiful. Look at this, everything's beautiful. Now take note of those gray tubes you see up there, like you would see for furnace ductwork in an old house in the basement or something, right? They were added in later. So clearly this is not, but this is officially this is reactor 4. Officially that's this building right there. It's 150 feet above it or more. That's what it looks like. So look at the top of the roof, by the way. Now, what you're looking up to, these are not support structures. These are just meant to capture hydrogen and vent it out. Because as the reactors, every year, you're putting more fuel in the pool, so you have more emissions going up the stack, but you also have a buildup inside the building of hydrogen. And if you displace the oxygen with hydrogen and then introduce oxygen again, you'll detonate it. So that would look bad on the nuclear industry, and they couldn't do that. So they gutted the building all the way to the ground. They brought in that contraption number 2 up there, number 3, number 4, number 5, and number 6. Now, you can see where my finger is pointed right there. That's probably, top corner down there or something. Right, it's a hoodwink. So anyway, what you're looking at are panels. There's 3 panels here, and they were brought in with cranes, and they're hung there with gravity because lethal doses everywhere. Now, inside of that weird-looking structure that they built on top of it, it looks like a brand-new reactor. A miracle. But in reality, this is what you had. So that's it, and then they put that contraption over it. It doesn't physically touch it. It cantilevers over it. Right? You can see the cantilever here. It doesn't physically touch that stump there. And the reason it doesn't touch the stump because the stump has no integrity, right? Now, when you get an earthquake shaking the stump inside of these contraptions that hoodwink the entire planet, you're having major releases. That shows up in Canada, United States, for many weeks after 3 or 4 days. 2013, levels of contamination on site at Fukushima Daiichi soaring as a typhoon slams Japan. Soaring. The utility announces now a typhoon is like a hurricane. And they were hitting Japan's Fukushima site at 190 miles per hour. Unprecedented. And these supercell storms, typhoons, cyclones, hurricanes, there he goes, have gone completely insane post-Fukushima. And we're seeing that worldwide now, where the storms now are 700 miles wide or 1,000 miles wide, and they're coming ashore at 160, 170, 180 miles per hour. But they never mention gust. They're like, oh, it's a steady wind at about 170. So that means it's gusting about 260 miles per hour. We don't have infrastructure, building codes to deal with that, right? And so the Philippines had got hit originally with this supercell storm. It hit the coastline and just grinded everything on the coastline for several days. It was like 10 million people evacuated. 2x4s were turned into projectiles all along. There was 10 million people left homeless or something. And they're asking people when they're going to start rebuilding. They were like, why would we want to rebuild if we're going to keep getting storms like this? We've never seen that before, right? This was the Fukushima effect now, worldwide. We dried out the earth. We killed the bacteria, the fungus, the biota that works in harmony with water and soil to make roots healthy for plants and trees and bushes in the ecosystem. A million creatures gone. It would break down the foliage and the litter, all gone. And so now we have, the earth is not soaking up water anymore. We talked about that a long time ago, 12, 13 years ago, that came up a lot. And so we expect the flash floods, and you expect air rage to show up and road rage to start getting out of control because of the radiation effect, right? And that's exactly what we've seen happen. But we're seeing flash floods, and then we're seeing forest fires, where the forest fire just grows bigger because the foliage and the litter didn't break down, become tender, dry. The earth is holding heat instead of water, so incredible amount of energy there. And when you get a lightning strike, the big foliage and litter chunks that should have been broken down by a million microscopic animals and the bacteria and the fungus that don't exist no more is now tender dry. It floats 1,000 feet or 100 feet, and there's another forest fire. And so that you can't get it under control and then you have, when it rains, it won't soak up in the earth because the earth now is perched because you kill the bacteria, the fungus, and the biota. And the microscopic world that breaks down the foliage and the litter. And so now you have flash floods, and that's what we've seen post-Fukushima, is massive flash floods, we had a massive forest fires. And now we're seeing forest fires, instead of like July, August, we're seeing them in March. Not April, but March, maybe February. In places where you've never even heard tell of that. Yeah, we're in trouble. All the whales are emaciated. We're in real trouble. And now we're going to have a big famine because the Strait of Hormuz has been shut down for so long. Right? All the fertilizer didn't get out, and so the crops are going to fail. And then that's going to, so in the fall, the famine will start. And then next year is going to be madness. So even if you stop the madness, right, that Israel is perpetrating with the United States' help in the Middle East, and then it's going to take 5 or 6 months for, even if we got oil flowing starting tomorrow, it'll take 5 or 6 months to get back to where we left off. And so because of the fertilizer, it's too late, even if the war stopped. The so-called, it's not a war, it's an agenda. It's a prophecy. The Israelis are trying to self-fulfill a prophecy to turn the world against them. It's part of their Torah, their Talmud, stupid, idiotic shit. Utility announced on Thursday that 140,000 becquerels per liter of beta emitting, well, what about gammas and alphas and neutrons, were collected in a water sample from a ditch that runs into the Pacific. So 140,000 becquerels per liter. Beta was running into the Pacific Ocean. I wonder where that came from. It's not 140,000 becquerels per liter. It's billions and billions and billions for every liter, and we're talking about an absurd amount running into the Pacific Ocean. They want you to think that they got it under control, that happened, we're on top of it, we figured it out. On Tuesday, they measured 59,000 becquerels in water samples at the same location, which was more than 11 times greater than the 5,000 becquerel reading taken on Monday. Right? Yeah, there's stuff getting out, but it's okay. We can deal with it. That's not true. And in fact, the Fukushima nuclear plume covered most of North America. Well, it covered the planet in 23 days. All the projections and all the documentation when it's put into the models, symmetrically, all the big shakers and movers were showing 20 to 30 days the whole planet was buried in hideous amounts that we've never even conceived before, of every isotope you can imagine in that plume. Every plume was full of everything. So not like a plume of neptunium, right, which happens to decay to plutonium over all of it to plutonium-239 within 25 days. It's not just the cesium-137 at 10 million atoms per cubic meter of air, or the iodine-129 at 220 million atoms per liter, or it's a Canadian study, or the 20 million liters of iodine-131 is 10 times more 132, 30 times more 133, 31 times more iodine-129, that same sample. Fukushima nuclear plume, the death plume, that attacks everything with replicating cells, covered all of the planet. Reactor 2 melted through the containment vessel. Workers lost the race. Well, Reactor 2 was right alongside of Reactor 3 and Reactor 4 and Reactor 1. They all melted down. So look at Reactor 2, which looks reasonable compared to these medusas. March the 30th, 2011. So we lost Reactor 2 core melted through the containment vessel. So they're admitting that Reactor 2 melted down. They've never admitted Reactor 3 and 4. And since August the 23rd, 24th, 2023, that never happened. The United Nations worked closely with South Korea, with China, with Japan, to hoodwink the 6 billion Asians. And Taiwan, of course, hoodwinked the 6 billion Asians on the planet into thinking that never happened. And I think they're pretty successful. They poisoned and destroyed the entire biosphere and ecosystem on our planet. And as far as they're concerned, all I got to do is shut down a few people like me, basically me. Workers lost their race. The homeless lost their race, he said. Leahy did add there was no danger of a Chernobyl-style catastrophe. No. He's the head of the safety research for boiling water reactors at General Electric. So General Electric said that didn't happen. Right, so you got no one to turn to. Everybody out there is too busy cutting your throat. And so when the head of General Electric Safety says it doesn't happen, he added there was no danger of a Chernobyl. The plant was leaking radiation that has made its way, and I'll show you the original pictures here, that has made its way in the raw milk and tap water as far away as Tokyo. Yeah, went right around the planet, and then they got to Tokyo. This was the 15th, March the 15th. So it wasn't an academic in the nuclear industry, a professor or alumni or corporations or student on the planet that didn't know all the inventories were gone. And you're talking about around 36 reactor cores. Excuse me. Yeah. Fox News reports that the workers succeeded last week in reconnecting some parts of the plant to the power grid. Did I mention a tsunami ran right through the site? It had huge explosions. It's a lethal dose everywhere. You couldn't do nothing. It's non-survivable. Like the most important was Syria. And that ran through it. So there was no infrastructure for 1,200 miles. Is it 1,200 miles? I don't know why I still have a problem with that even today. 1,200 miles or 1,200 kilometers? I don't know. I don't care either, actually. We'll read it eventually. We'll come back to it. We'll circle back to that at some point. So when a tsunami, a raging river coming in at 400 miles per hour, 500 miles per hour, it rises up and it comes through your site, there's nothing functional. Like, I can show you so much to quantify my assertion. But I don't think I should have to do it all the time, but it's not that I should have to, it's that it's very time consuming, right? That which is okay. Fox News reports that workers succeeded last reconnecting it. Oh, yeah, that was wonderful. As they pumped in water to cool the reactors and the nuclear fuel. You're not pumping anything in. The fuel reactors were gone. Officials are hoping tanks at the complex will be able to hold the water or that new tank can be trucked in. Well, you can't truck in these tanks. These tanks are... You have to come in by barge with a big crane. They did do that, but they weren't big tanks either. On Tuesday, officials from the Non-Nuclear Safety Commission, expert panel of nuclear scum, said other possibilities including digging a storage pit for the contaminated water, recycling it back into the reactors, of course, their favorite, right straight into the ocean, or even pumping it to an offshore tanker. Right, so there's a lot of emphasis that it's not going to get into the ocean. They got control. We're doing the best we can. We're keeping ahead of it. We don't know how much longer. So far, so good. Attitude, right? They have no control whatsoever. Nothing like that. They had no control whatsoever. You can't get near a gallon of this without getting a lethal dose. The latest mishap came Tuesday when 3 workers trying to connect a pump outside the Unit 3 reactor were splashed by radioactive water that gushed from a pipe. They were splashed. Everything was okay, though. They were sent home with a clean bill of health. And so these stories are meant to say, my God, these people are working in dangerous environments. Though they were wearing suits meant to be waterproof and protect against high levels of radiation, there is no suits that can protect against high levels of radiation. It doesn't exist. It's a complete fantasy. And that's the whole story of nuclear is a fantasy, right? They're such evil and twisted and demented and sick and murderous. They quickly washed it off and were not injured. Radiation doesn't work like that. The gamma shines, the neutron bombardment, the alpha rays, the beta shines will melt your organs from distances. It doesn't have to be in proximity, and the damage never stops. Once you start the cycle, your organs are on auto self-destruct. I put a good dent into it tonight. My problem is I got 200 of these old headlines over the last number of days. I got 200 headlines. Not 200, I'm sorry. 186. Stop lying, Dana. I could find a few more, though. I'm pretty sure if I tries. I bookmarked it, so I never got through everything. So maybe I'll do that on the weekend for badness. They were trying to trap radiation underground with metal plates. Like, they tell so many lies, you can't keep up with it because you have to challenge every lie with some kind of honesty, right? Something so that people have better insight. It's an educational program, but it's madness where it's almost every sentence you have to challenge. You can't do it. So you just pick out the most blatant ones, the most holy crap, man. If there's no incentive to be evil, that's the stuff we're covering. They say this stuff because there's no incentive. They're not going to get in trouble. They're not going to lose their degree for the fabrications. They're going to get honorary degrees down the road. They're going to win a Nobel Prize for telling the biggest lies. That's the reality of it. Madame Curie got 2 Nobel Prizes, right? She couldn't wipe her own hair. She lost both of her hands to radiation, but she got 2 Nobel Prizes. She couldn't hang on to it. She couldn't pick up. She most likely wouldn't want it. She would most likely want her 2 hands back so she could wipe her own fucking arse and feed herself and touch her children and her grandchildren. You would hope anyway. Yet, the International Atomic Energy has a Marie Curie scholarship to bring in young girls and turn them into the next Marie Curie, right? They're just evil. They have an endless amount of money. And There's nothing they won't. There's nothing too low to stoop for these people. The International Atomic Energy Agency, United Nations, European Security, IPRC, IPCC. There's nothing too evil for them to say, and that's the shock value we deal with almost too much. It's just too much, but it makes it more important. There's nothing more important than keeping this story alive. There's nothing more important. We can't allow them to get away with what they've done and continue to do and are planning on doing. This is our watch. This is our responsibility. It's our obligation. We're obligated. And not just because of Magna Cartas or Bill of Rights or constitutions, but because you have 8 million species that are dependent upon us to have a voice, because they don't have a voice. The so-called voices are all captured industries. We got the big views tonight again, did we? 16 viewers. Wow, that's not bad. 16 likes, 13 votes. Was Fukushima doomed? Did being 79 kilometers, it's actually 70 kilometers, I screwed up, from the tectonic plates, shaped the 2011 quake and tsunami impact? Somebody said no. How can you say no to that poll? Not poll, I'm sorry, to that. So James is working on something pretty special. He's evolved. I'm not saying nothing. It's up to him to tell you. But I can't keep everything to myself. He's working on some pretty cool magic. Let's put it that way. I covered 200 kilometers today on the bike, and I didn't see a single migratory bird. Now we're right in the migratory season. There's supposed to be 46 million migratory birds on their way here to raise their fledglings. And they're not going to show up. They haven't showed up for the last 5 years. They ain't going to show up this year. But now, seeing a bird is special. Any kind of bird. Even the seagulls, it's still cool. Because they eat at McDonald's, not at the coastlines. So it's easy to find them. Or just go to McDonald's or a fast food joint. You'll find them. You won't find them down the coastline. They're not in the low tide line picking up mussels or snails or sea urchins and dropping it on your pavement or sidewalks so they can get the food. And you go down there, you won't see any shells. When that was a normal thing you would always see. If you walk along the coastline and there's a road there, it's lots of birds and other animals are using the cement, the pavement, to break up shells and mussels and sea urchins. Right, they pick it up, fly up, and then drop it down and cracks it open, and they go down and eat it. But there's no shell carcasses on the beaches, let alone up there on the sidewalks and the sides of the roads, which normally was a hazardous. Anyway. We made it through the night. That's cool. We made it through 5 days, so I'm pretty stoked about it. I'm going to play Nuclear Overton Window, if I can find it here. Fur Closer, that's a fantastic nuclear song. Nuclear Overton Window. And that's in the same playlist. You'll find that song in the playlist in my chat room. Now, if you're watching the show after the live show, you got to come back in 12 hours and go in the comments section, and you'll find that playlist. Or you can go in my playlist and you'll see anti-nuclear music everybody would like, it's in that playlist, right? It's an easy way, quick way to find it, and then that site then will be connected to it. You have a great night, a great day tomorrow. Hugs for everybody. And unless there's some breaking news, I'll take the next couple of days. We'll be back on Sunday night as usual, regular time. Try to get this schedule up and running again. Hugs for everybody. Take care.
Those who decide told us there was no alternative. They said the demand was fixed. They said reliability needs scale, and scale won't wait. They said firm power, constant power. Said the future needs it now. They called it a renaissance. Said the decision was already made. They said delay was danger. They said review was over. This is how the nuclear Overton window began to narrow. Those who decide talked about solutions, talked about schedules, but not about keeping what remains when the generation ends. They talked about storage for now, they talked about fixes ahead. They said the process was technical, not ours. They didn't talk about the horizon, they didn't name who stays accountable. The nuclear Overton window never held a long term. Asking slowed things down, then caution cost too much. Consent became friction, so it was pushed aside. The nuclear Overton window moved again, from open debate to settled position. Rules were shortened, reviews rushed. Governance turned into something to move through. The window didn't shatter, the push continues. Here stands the nuclear Overton window, not cracked, not broken, held open on purpose. Not a future to keep reopening, not a decision to keep revisiting. This must be decided, this must be carried, this must not be passed forward without an end in sight. Remember this moment. The nuclear Overton window must close. Not paused, not deferred, entered into practice with consent. This should not remain unresolved. This is what we must remember. This is what we must remember.